Home, House of Multiracial Evolution, a private club and restaurant, 18341 Van Dyke. Home provides a private space for meetings, parties, or repasts. Home also provides space for people of all racial backgrounds to come together and enjoy delicious food and support the great tradition of Detroit live jazz. For more information, call 313-753-5619.
Good morning. Welcome to the last episode of Stage of Economy. Today I'm going to try and finish up talking about some of the issues we left off with last week. And I'm going to dwell on relationships and how important they were during this journey of mine. I remember my father teaching me that one of the most important things was relationships, how you could communicate to others through various relationships. For example, my father was a burial insurance agent, and as we would travel through the community collecting our insurance monies, many times I would see him go to these wealthy white folks' homes, and he'd always come back with a bag, a package. And I would say, "Dad, what's that?" He said, "Well, you know, I have a pretty good relationship with these women. They take care of their husbands' kids." That's, as I said back in one of my earlier shows, my community was multiracial because there was so many kids that had white fathers. And he would say, but the relationship that I build with them is that if I need some man in the community to get a message, I could usually tell one of the women's, and the pillow talk would take place. But I remember that, and I kept that in mind during my journey. And every opportunity I had, I would try to cherish building relationships with people. Now, I talked last week about going to Florida with one of the contractors and how they received me and treated me. But I developed that relationship with this young man. We're going to refer, I always call him Skip, because he would skip all whatever procedures that I was supposed to be following. Skip would skip them. And he's the same guy that I was able to go upstairs one time and pick up $25,000 or $30,000 to put up a no trespassing on 12 miles of land within 3 or 4 days. But not knowing how he was able to do that didn't really bother me. But during this relationship, we became very good friends after staying at his house that week. So probably 3 to 4 times every winter, we would go to Florida and party about every 3 or 4 weeks. I'm going to share briefly this because there's so much I want to try to share today at this being the last show. I'm not going to have time to get into a lot of details. But during this time, there was like a circle of people that I was in. You know, and I didn't understand what was going on. Many times I know now what was going on because I'm able to discover the truth. As I said some time ago, truth is never told or interpreted. It is always discovered. So many of my truth was discovered later. But out of this truth that I discovered, while going to Florida every 3 to 4 weeks during the winter, we would always have tickets arranged ahead of time. And looking back, I found out we had an airplane pilot that happened to work for Delta, but had been utilized because he was part Native American as a minority contractor. And why I had fought to get minority contractors in, I had no idea that someone in my circle had formed a minority contractor with a Native American who happened to be an airplane pilot. And consequently, these trips became free to all of us, some kind of way. But while going back and forth to Florida, I began to develop this relationship with Skip, and it had gotten to the point that we would go out and I would accept them as they were. Meaning, if they wanted to laugh and talk about one of their pet shows was Amos and Andy, and they had names for everybody in their group. Like one of them's wife was Sapphire, and Sapphire and I got along real well because she could not probably understand how I could accept laughing and joking about Amos and Andy show with them when we'd be out partying. But anyway, this relationship built on to the point that I would visit. Skip had a home on the lake here in Michigan, and he had a home in Florida, besides other places, Boulder, Colorado, or someplace. But anyway, whenever I would go to his home, I was welcome. And his wife, Jane, would make me feel at home. So with this relationship, it became a time once that I was at his home on the lake, and I finally had learned how to ski, and they got me up on the skis, and we were sort of celebrating and having a few drinks. I ended up in his library. And as I looked up on the shelf in the library, I saw the same shrunken head that I saw in the chairman of the board's office, Walter Sisler. So I reached into the cabinet and pulled it out, and I looked, I said, "Skip, this is me, man. What are you doing with me up on your shelf?" And he laughed, and he said, we had quite a few. He said, "Well, you can have it, man. You can." But the ironic thing about this is that when I had observed the shrunken head in Walter Sisler's office, and this guy is still living today, one of the mail carrier, mail delivery boy out of the mailroom, had a conversation with me about the shrunken head, because when he would go in Mr. Sisler's office, the chairman, he would see this head. So he said, "Man, one day I asked him about this head, and he told me," he said, that the head is named Yoke. And he said, "No, I don't know." He said, that's what I call that is Yoke. And so when I called Kenny the next day after I took the head, although that night or the next morning, Skip called me. He said, "Man, I'll give you $5,000 to bring the head back." He said, that's, anyway, we went to, he said, "That's my grandfather's." He said, "My grandfather was a Ford, Henry Ford, and him and Walter Sisler would go to Africa hunting, and they'd bring these trophies back." He says, "But just in case you think about canceling my contract," because he had a $500,000 contract coming up that year, he says, "Let me tell you something, man." He said, "My grandfather bought that shrunken head from a black man." And he said, "You should look into and get the history of how that happened along the Nile River." But anyway, I kept the shrunken head and refused to give it back to him. But the name Yoke jumped out at me because I think I was saying last week, that's what my grandfather had. My great-grandfather, who was supposed to have been a runaway slave, that's what my grandfather told me to call him Yoke, and don't let him put that yoke on my neck, because you remember I mentioned that. But by now I got this shrunken head, and Skip and I have a beautiful relationship. Damon Keefe, the judge, has given us some leeway in terms of whatever problem we would have with the company, no matter how big or small. They had to sit down and meet with us and resolve it. Every month we had a meeting, and we had negotiated to have these meetings off campus on we brought him into the neighborhood at a co-op. My assistant, Mr. Stanfield, was the president of a co-op and right in the heart of the city. So we decided we would have the meetings with the company at the co-op. And this meant that the vice presidents or whoever was on their committee would have to have the chauffeurs bring them over to the co-op. And, it was an experience for many of them because they didn't even know how to get into the inner city. But this became very aggravating to them, and the political arena went into effect again and made sure that Damon Keith got transferred to Cincinnati, and they bumped him up to appeals court because this way he wouldn't have jurisdiction over what he had been doing for them. For us, the case then would be handled basically by someone else. But during this process, we lost a lot of energy because we no longer could call the company every month and say, we got X amount of grievances, we're going to sit down and resolve these. Because I guess the political wing of Mr. Cohan had taken place. And he had invited me to, he took me to dinner one day and says, Stamps, if you wake up in the morning and find yourself on the board of directors, what would you do? Now, prior to this, he had invited me to dinner with the basketball player, Dave Bing. He said, I'm having dinner with Dave Bing at my house, and I want you and your wife to come out and have dinner with Dave. I says, okay. But then the next week we went to dinner. He says, if you wake up and find yourself on the board of directors, what would you do? And I said, I would continue to do what I've been doing, just demanding that I be treated equal, and anybody look like me should be treated equal. And we laughed, and the next day I got a call, and I was uninvited to dinner. So my wife had bought a beautiful dress and stuff. So, damn, the chairman of the board, Leon Cohan, has uninvited us to dinner with Dave Bing. But later on, I realized after taking a trip to California and visiting with a cousin of mine who happened to own a mortgage company, a Miracle Mortgage Company in L.A., and I was telling him about my situation, and he says, well, man, I work, I have a mortgage company, and, he's a Jew. He says he knows Leon Cohan because we've laughed and talked about it. He says, but I give, he said, I'm a millionaire. He said, but I give up 25%, man, of everything I make. And we're going to go by this Jew's house this morning. So we went in through the back door, went to the refrigerator, he got his coffee. It was just, And he said, anyway, long story short, he said, when you sit down and write Leon a letter and tell him when you're out here in California undressing yourself, and when you get back, you want him to send you to his tailor. I said, what do you mean, man? He said, just do what I say. So I wrote the letter and sent it to Leon, and when I got back, he called and said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Send me to your tailor, but come on, we'll have lunch one day. And that's when I found out he was going to dress me with a mentor. I'll be back shortly to try to complete the story and wrap up how we ended up settling the case and how he dressed me with a mentor that walked me through the next probably 10 years or so until I was able to retire. Because by then, I found out this past year after, 19, I had a house fire. And I discovered that by 1980, I was 40 years old, and I was a millionaire without even knowing it, because my wife had a estate planner do a estate plan for me, and I found it after this fire in 2019 in my house. I was 40 years old and had been on the job 5 years, and this particular paperwork that I found in 2018 indicated that I had been a millionaire by the time I was 40. But anyway, I'll be right back shortly to complete this episode. Thank you. See you shortly.
Home, House of Multiracial Evolution, a private club and restaurant, 18341 Van Dyke. Home provides a private space for meetings, parties, or repasts. Home also provides space for people of all racial backgrounds to come together and enjoy delicious food and support the great tradition of Detroit live jazz. For more information, call 313-753-5619. We, the people of Detroit, is dedicated to community coalition building and to the provision of resources that inform, train, and mobilize the citizens of Detroit and beyond to improve their quality of life. As a community-based grassroots organization, we the people of Detroit aim to inform, educate, and empower Detroit residents on imperative issues surrounding civil rights, land, water, education, and the democratic process. For more information, call 844-42-WATER, 844-42-WATER, or email wethepeopleofdetroit.com.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabree. We are living through unprecedented times. As a result, the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund was created. This fund, administered by the state of Michigan, is designed to help homeowners cope with pandemic-related hardships, such as delinquent property taxes. Residents may apply for up to $25,000 to help cover 2019, 2020, and 2021 tax years. Previous year's taxes must be paid in full or in a payment agreement with the Treasurer's Office. Eligible homeowners must have a qualified financial hardship that occurred on or after January 21st, 2020. You must currently own and occupy your home as your primary residence and must have owned it since January 21st, 2020. To see if you qualify, please visit waynemetro.org, call 313-388-9799, or email taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Thank you. Welcome back. We're going to briefly try to speed forward because I do want to get in a couple of things about AAA before I end today. So now Leon Cohen, who had orchestrated the hookup with the Attorney General's William Rogers, began to, by now the Supreme Court had ruled that they upheld Cincinnati's ruling and that that was the end of it. We should begin to negotiate how we was going to disperse of the monies, how the $5 million back pay was going to be handled. So we began to talk about this, and we ended up meeting for about 4 or 5 days. We had a week. We was going to meet every day. He had set up a office out in Oak Park someplace. But anyway, my attorneys was there, the government attorneys, and for about 3 days we didn't get any place. At this particular time, I had really realized that my mentor, lady that had been really reporting back to the company, we had an incident where my wife and I was in Grenada on a cruise ship, and we got off and went. Anyway, my wife discovered that this person were in Grenada because she saw in the bookstore one of her books, and the person offered to take her to where she was living. So Jerry thought, wow, it'd be very good to see Michelle while I'm in Grenada. But anyway, shortly after she took off to go visit her, the whistle on the ship started blowing, and we was ordered back to the ship. And Oh, it was really crazy because by the time I could scuffle and find where she went and get the guy to bring her back, we just barely got back on the ship because Grenada was being attacked and the bombs was coming in. Anyway, she ended up getting trapped in a house that she was living with. Later I found out. But I share that because this relationship with her, after this became very obvious that she was Marxist and had very broad relationships across the spectrum. But she was attending a meeting with us, and I couldn't quite figure out how to utilize this process after about 3 or 4 days. So anyway, I said to her one night after we had finished the session, I said, you know, my board of directors at Abbey has decided that we want to put on the table tomorrow. We had 301 employees eligible for $5 million. So it's very simple. We just take 301 and divide it into $5 million. Each one gets equal pay. And her eyes got big, you know. I say, and plus the greatest part of it is that we're going to ask for 10% donation to our nonprofit organization, which will give us about $500,000 to continue to operate AIM and fund the building, which I now own the building, but AIM rents the building from me, you know. But anyway, I dropped that dime on her, and because we had never voted on it. It was just an idea of a young man that I have to mention. What a coincidence this happened to be. When I was 3 years old, I remember 3 or 4, I got off the train in Cairo, Illinois, and discovered that I was colored. There, we had to get off and go to the back, and the soldiers got off at the same time. But when we reached the back of the train, there was not enough seats. And this one particular soldier insisted on the other soldiers to get up. So my mom, and my mom had my sister in her arm, and my brother was older than I, and we were tagging along. He made sure the soldiers got up and gave us a seat. Now, this is one of the strangest coincidences in my life. About around 69 or 70, I'm sitting in the locker room as a janitor at Edison, and I talk about this train ride, and it was so significant. I happened to mention that we never made it back home on it. We had to get off in Grenada, Mississippi, because some guy, a black guy, had supposedly been accused of raping a white woman, and they held the train up all day. And my father had to drive from Jackson to Grenada to pick us up. And the guy sitting in the lock, he looked and he started laughing. He says, Stamps, he says, do you remember what you was wearing that day? I said, I'll never forget it because it was a little white navy. And he started laughing. He said, you know, I am the guy that got up and let your mother. So I called my mother that night and asked her to describe the guy. And it was a guy named Herman Carter. Herman Carter, you know, but he had became a soulmate. He allowed me to have my meetings, Abbey, at his home in Highland Park. And he just became a very good friend. But he was the one that had taken me to the first meeting when I agreed to sign the letter and became president of Abbey. It was just a spiritual thing. My kids call him Uncle Herman. But Uncle Herman turned out to be utilized when we started getting job promotion. My contact and employment placed him in a very strategic spot where the communication system in Farmington, where the company whole communication was at. He was the first black guy to get a job there. But anyway, he was able to supply me with information on who was tapping my phone and all kind of information. But I'm going to get back to where Leon apparently got this information. Now, I had an uncle that drove for Lee Iacocca. He was his personal chauffeur. And when Bill Cosby and a lot of entertainers would come to the city, that would be parties that Iacocca would go to, and Damon would be there, Damon Keith. And my uncle just happened to give Damon Keith a ride home one night. And Damon sent me a message by my uncle. He said, tell Stamps that never allow Bill Gould, his attorney, to meet with anybody from Edison by itself. So I had this conversation with Professor Gould, because at this time Professor Gould was living, he had became a job at Stanford. He was head of Stanford University Law Department, Law School, and he had moved to out San Francisco, and he lived on the campus at Stanford. So I had to share this with Bill, and we had made this pledge one time while we was in D.C. That he would honor that. So the next day after we went back to negotiating, Leon said, "Well, we're not getting anywhere. We just let's just leave today about 10 o'clock. We left early." So later on that afternoon, I get a call from Professor Gould. They were staying at the Punch Train Hotel. He says, "I'll tell you what, I got this meeting in the morning at 6 o'clock at Leon Cohen's house in Bloomfield. Can you give me a ride? Because I had promised you I wouldn't meet with him without you being there." I said, "Sure, Bill. I'll pick you up at about 5:15 at the Punch Train in the morning." And he said, "The guy at the government with me will be going out to his house for breakfast." I said, "Okay." I said, "But you know, I was uninvited to Leon's house some time ago. I was supposed to go there and have a meet with Dave. I told him about being, but I'm going to go for breakfast if you said that's what we." So I arrived at the Punch Train about 5 that morning, and I usually go to the desk and pick up the phone and say, "Bill, I'm on the way up." But this morning I picked up the morning. I said, "Bill, I'm on the way up. I'm here." He says, "I'll be right down. Just stay down in the lobby. I'll be right down." And I thought, out of all 7 or 8 years that we were doing this, every time he'd come with the Punch Train, I always just go upstairs. So my instinct, I hung up the phone and I turned, and the elevator was not far from. I looked at the elevator. What the hell? I'm going to go up anyway. So I got on the elevator and I headed upstairs to his. And as soon as I got off the elevator, there was 2 young white ladies getting on. One of them, I, for some reason, sort of recognized. It took me back to when I was working as a serviceman. I was, when the lawsuit was first filed, I was given an assignment to take this young lady to the post office about 12 o'clock at night one night to make sure some ballots from something got in the mail. So after we dropped at the post office, she wanted to stop at the bar and have a drink, and I refused because I was aware that perhaps she was a plant. But I recognized this lady as being one of those, this is 7 or 8 years later, 10 years, as being one of those ladies. Thought nothing about it. Gould was very flustered when I got to his room, and we got dressed, and we went to Leon Cohen's house. We pulled up in West Bloomfield at his drive porch, and he came out about 6 o'clock. And he said, "Oh, Willie," he said, "I'm sorry, man, but I'm going to have to uninvite you." He said, "I know." I said, "Hey, man, you uninvited me to your house before with Dave Bean, so it's okay. You mean now I can't come in for breakfast?" He said, "I'm sorry, this meeting is..." And Gould looked at me, and the guy from the government looked at me, and man, it was the most humiliating feeling I ever had in my life. I said, "So what am I supposed to do?" And he said, "Well, you can wait here in the driveway. It's not going to take long. They'll be out." So I sit in the driveway while they went in, and all kind of things came across my mind. But long story short is this is when I discovered later they blackmailed my attorney because these 2 ladies had slept with them that night, and they had videotaped them. And when they came out, they told me the lawsuit was over, and their case was being reassigned to a new Jewish law firm. And I'm like, how in the hell is Damon Keefe going to approve this? Anyway, I guess from calling in a political favor, Damon approved it, never brought Abby members or none of the plaintiffs of the lawsuit in to discuss this at all. And the case was settled that way. And they decided to pay out based on the day that you hired. If you hired in at 9 o'clock, a white fella hired in at 9:15, you got the difference pay in what he made and what you made. This was the formula they used. But that destroyed the organization because some people got 5,000, some people got 100,000, some people got, it was ridiculous. But anyway, I'll be right back. We're going to take a short break, pay the bills, and I'll see you shortly.
LaWanda.
This is R.J. Watkins.
Coming to you to bring you some information about the #1 detox in the nation, Lemon Burn. Lemon Burn helps to turn the fat into fit. It's for you, a happier, healthier you. Because you know healthy is the new beautiful. An all-natural way to improve your health. It promotes a healthy digestive system, attacks and reduces belly fat, as well as gives you energy. Need to get yours today. Call 313-868-6612.
Don't forget to exercise and eat right.
Watkins Broadcasting is going worldwide. Now you can watch Detroit's own WHPR on your TV from anywhere in the world. No matter where you are, you can stay in the know with WHPR TV and Roku. You can get your easy-to-install Roku box from wherever you shop for your entertainment gear. Once your Roku box is connected to your TV and internet, go to the channel store on the home menu of the Roku box. Enter WHPR TV in the search engine and add it to your channels. That's it. That's all you need to get the best in entertainment, news, and talk, no matter where you are. Roku brings all of your favorites to your TV. Netflix, Hulu Plus, Crackle, HBO Go, and now WHPR TV, Detroit Live.
At the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department, we're working hard to protect pipes by cleaning public sewer lines to reduce flooding and speeding up the replacement of lead service lines. Protect your pipes with 3 easy tips. Pour grease into containers, toss wipes in the trash can, and check for running toilets, leaky pipes, and dripping faucets. For more tips, go to detroitmi.gov/protect pipes. DWSD, working hard to protect pipes for you.
Home, House of Multiracial Evolution, a private club and restaurant, 18341 Van Dyke. Home provides a private space for meetings, parties, or repasts. Home also provides space for people of all racial backgrounds to come together and enjoy delicious food and support the great tradition of Detroit live jazz. For more information, call 313-753-5619.
Thank you. Welcome back to this segment of Stage of Accountability. I'm going to be very brief and try to wrap up my end of this because I definitely want to talk about AAA for a few minutes. But as I was saying, the lawsuit then, it tore the organization apart because it was ridiculous of how some people could get as much as $150,000, $60,000 and never came to a meeting. I remember a couple of chauffeurs getting $100 and some thousand, and then some people getting as little as $3,500 who had been very active in the organization, and that was very stressful on me. I think I might have took a leave of absence, had a nervous breakdown during that time or whatever. But after all of this was over, in about a week or two, I did get a chance to have a interview with a writer from the Detroit Free Press. And there's an article, if you ever go in the graveyard of Detroit, it's called Willie Stamps Trapped in the Maze. Because I shared with him the situation that happened at Bloomfield Hills at that breakfast meeting. And I had shared with him my concept of what I had saw on the elevator, these young ladies. Because I knew I had a high school friend of mine who I ran track with in high school, had manipulated his way into the security department and worked for Edison Security, and he had informed me of how they would set up blackmail and situations, how they would film people, and this did exist because I had gotten first-hand knowledge from him. But the writer, instead of writing what I had said, he said, Willie Stamps Trapped in a Maze, and he wrote an article about how it was, this maze I was in, I was not going to be able to get out, and didn't mention anything about in other words, he edited. But anyway, I got a call from Leon and said, man, I want to thank you. Because in the article, he never did mention, he just said one of the executives of Edison's home. He didn't mention the person's name. And Leon called and wanted to thank me for not, and he says, I still owe you a visit to my house for dinner, And consequently, we became pretty good friends, and we would have lunch every once in a while. And he said, well, I'm going to send you to that tailor. And he set up me with a vice president named Jim Oliver, who was head of the personnel department. He said, go to lunch with him at least once a week, and whatever problems you have, we're going to work them out. And I continued to do this for quite some time with Jim Oliver. I would, whatever I needed. My daughter got fired. He got a job back. A lot of employees had problems. They could come to me directly. I remember some of the guys, at least I had gotten back about 10 people jobs I had gotten fired just by making a phone call. Even my guy in personnel, Jim Very, had gotten fired for selling jobs. And I made a phone call, and he got his job back. I had got very popular in terms of getting folks' jobs back, even to the point of defending them with General Order 187. General Order 187 said you had the right to bring a peer, employment had a person, and the president would. And if those three people, either one of them decided that you shouldn't have been fired, you got your job back. So I was overwhelmed with requests to serve on this committee of General Order 187 to the point that they changed the general order. They took it out of the system. But this relationship with Jim Oliver revolved into a point one night he sat down and he said, I enjoy going to dinner with you, man. He said, because you don't tell me what I want to hear. He said, most of the people that I go to lunch with of your race, it's boring to me, he said, because they be struggling to tell me what they think I want to hear. He said, but man, I enjoy it. We would drink and get really blasted, And he said, but you always just talk. You don't give a damn if I want to hear what you got to say or not. He said, you tell me, I enjoy that. And we became very good friends because I later discovered that he was a player. They call them Oliver girls, and the girls that had went to my attorney's room, he knew them very well. So we could talk about those kind of things off record. But anyway, after this happened, Leon dressed me, and I headed towards the point that the company was going to get rid of me one way or the other. After the state crime police had failed, they would order me. So he sent me a message, say, look, man, I'm going to be leaving pretty soon, so I'd like to get you out of here before I go, because if I don't, they're going to rip you apart. So by this time, Coleman Young had got rid of his assistant. It was a funny story about he made him sit in the lobby, waited to meet with him all day. And by the way, he came to Edison as a vice president, and he became a connect between me and selling outside of, because by now things was rolling pretty good. I had gotten my golden peanut. One of the people in my circle had been to the inauguration ball when Carter became president, and when Coleman was mayor. I had a gold pen of Coleman's. I could put it on my lapel, and I put the peanut on my lapel. And I could basically work my way downriver through the political scene, in and out of various situations, being recognized as one of the boys, in the circle. So life was getting good, and everything was going well. And he says, but we're going to have to try and get you out. At the meantime, I had filed a suit against a lady on my job for she had filed a sexual harassment complaint against her. That's a story I can't get into. But it was a young white lady who had been put up to file a sexual harassment charge, and I had in turn sued her. So I received a notice on it saying, hey, look, man, we can get you out how much you want, to get out. And I said $1 million anyway. the negotiation began, and by the time I was 53, they had paid me what I had asked for. And I was given a leave of absence until I turned 55. They paid me my full salary, and I had to stay home. And I retired at 53 with full benefits and a pretty good settlement out the door. But they paid me to leave because I had begun to organize another lawsuit against them. But that's how that ended, and I went home, and many years later, I had plenty of time to reflect on this, and decided that I would write a book. I would tell my story, and that's where I am today. After this, my wife and son passed, and my wife passed in 2018, and son passed 6 months later. And I had this house fire. That's when I discovered a lot of paperwork that my wife had put away in the vault. I just had to feel like, wow, there's something I've got to do, So I figured out, well, maybe I will write a book, or maybe I will. But anyway, being led by the Spirit, I'm here at this point. And the house fire was like God was calling me to get him back involved, because I had just been planning to go to Maryland, where they had decided to hang the pictures of my wife and son in the lobby of the hospital that had been desegregated as a result of me turning down the $5 million. Well, not turning down, but a little drop in the lawsuit that could have netted me $5 million. And accepted the fact that they integrate the hospital, we'd be all right. So this was all taking place. And after the fire, the insurance company came out, and it was like, I had one room damage, water damage. And the thing that took place was, the insurance adjuster immediately, before even going in the house, offered me, look, I'll give you $150,000 for the house. You put $20 up for the city for demolition. I said, the house is not going to be torn down. It's only one room fire, She says, but no, it's with the water damage and all that. She said, and by the way, you probably want to get out of this neighborhood anyway. I can hook you up with a condo for about $100,000, and you got $20,000, you got $30,000 in your pocket, But anyway, I refused to do that, and she became belligerent and went in the house and gave me said, well, you need to get these 3 contractors to bid on this job because, But the relationship went south, so I filed a complaint with AAA. I'm going to come back briefly in a few minutes and tell you about how filing that complaint about how I was treated by the investigator turned out to be just expose a lot of truth of how the insurance companies are ripping us off Santa City, and how people are hustling, getting their kickback. And by me having the experience of being involved in this, I could very easily, clearly see this. So we'll be back shortly and wrap that up, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Home, House of Multiracial Evolution, a private club and restaurant, 18341 Van Dyke. Home provides a private space for meetings, parties, or repasts. Home also provides space for people of all racial backgrounds to come together and enjoy delicious food and support the great tradition of Detroit live jazz. For more information, call 313-753-5619.
Have you ever wanted your own TV show? Have you dreamed of showcasing your talent for the world to see? Well, now you can. Have your own TV show. You can have your own 30-minute show. Not only will you be seen in the Detroit area, but you can be viewed worldwide. For more information, call 313-868-6612. Visit our studios and receive a free TV interview to promote your business, church, or organization by appointment only.
We, the People of Detroit, is dedicated to community coalition building and to the provision of resources that inform, train, and mobilize the citizens of Detroit and beyond to improve their quality of life. As a community-based grassroots organization, we, the People of Detroit, aim to inform, educate, and empower Detroit residents on imperative issues surrounding civil rights, land, water, education, and the democratic process. For more information, call 844-42-WATER, 844-42-WATER, or email wethepeopleofdetroit.com. Home, House of Multiracial Evolution, a private club and restaurant, 18341 Van Dyke. Home provides a private space for meetings, parties, or repasts. Home also provides space for people of all racial backgrounds to come together and enjoy delicious food and support the great tradition of Detroit live jazz. For more information, call 313-753-5619.
Thank you. Well, I'm back. Let me wrap this up here. We were just talking about AAA. So after the investigator, I refused to take her offer, and she gave me 3 cards. I said, well, you know, she come in the house and said, you're going to call 3 of these contractors and get a price. She says, because I'm not going to pay you your money if you do it yourself or if you hire somebody else, because they usually don't have enough money to finish the job. So I'm going to strongly suggest that you use these one of these 3 companies. The 3-card Molly, we used to call it. It's just where one guy owned 3 companies, and you give a price to 3, you know, they bid, and the pack gets to, you know, the rat gets the pack, or whatever we used to say. But, you know, you keep the money in the family. So I knew about this, and I said, no, dear, you know, but she left very upset, and I had filed a complaint. But the next investigator that they came out to look at the house, he came, and I could tell something about policemen. I don't know what it was, but anyway, he turned out to be an ex-state crime police investigator. And he was in the house for about 10 minutes, and he could quickly see that the fire had been started. My wife had a lift chair that we had been piling mail up in, and the switch for the lift chair, the light was, I never turned it off, and there was only one plug in the living room that was not hot, had been burnt out, and that was the plug that the chair was burned in. So it was very simple that the fire started in this chair with all this paper on it, and because no other electrical outlet in the room was damaged. You know. And he said, oh, my, we had to find out where you bought this chair from, because we can claim that the chair was malfunctioning. But this time he gets a phone call. And he said, well, get your daughters to get me the address and name of the company you bought the chair from, and I'll be right back. I'm going out to my truck to take this call. When he came back in after the phone call, he was a total different person. And I suppose whoever he had talked to, because I had gotten an answer the next day back from my complaint explaining that by me being a senior citizen in my 80s, they just wanted to help me. She was trying to go over and above to do her job to make sure that I was comfortable by offering to buy me a condo, get me this condo at this price. And I said, man, I don't want to hear that bull, you know. But anyway, when he came back in, his whole attitude was that he said, I'm going to have to go through this stuff now, and I'm going to go through these ashes and blah, blah, blah. Because he had originally said he was going to be gone in about 15, 20 minutes, and the thing was, you know. So I said, well, I'm going to have to leave, man. I'll leave when I come back. So I left, and when I came back, he was still shoveling through the store or something. But anyway, he looked at me. He said, "Man, let me ask you a question." He said, "There's a picture in the back. I had Florida room where I had my hot tub and stuff. I had a picture on the wall of Jesse Jackson and I." And he says, "There's a picture of you and Jesse Jackson." So he said, "Do you know him?" I said, "Well, I had a couple of occasions where I met with him." I said, "Why you?" He said, "Well, man, I'm a ex-state crime police officer." And he says, "I know you were investigated by the Red Squad." I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about, the Red Squad?" Because I knew the state crime police had investigated me, but the Red Squad is known for the political hookup. They get their man. They went after Kwame. They went after, whoever they go, He said, "But your case, it was strange. It's been suppressed." And I'm like, if it has, how in the hell are you supposed to know about it? But that's when things turned to the worst, because by now, the investigator is claiming that my house was firebombed, because I was writing a tell-all book, and which had nothing, and I was being investigated, Man, it blew my mind, because from this point on, I ended up having to get a lawyer. I went to my deposition, and they claimed that someone had threw a firebomb through my house, which was the fire department. I had said no, there was no evidence of, it was just a suspicious fire. No windows had been broken. My neighbor said that there was no smoke coming out the windows when the fire department came. But she had documented all of this, and the big law firm downtown, about 20 lawyers on their page, was defending the AAA. But long story short, I began to write to chairman of the board of AAA, in which I'm going to be publishing a book with all of these letters that I wrote to chairman of the board, giving the whole detail of how AAA misled a lot of folks and just took their houses, and how the people hustled to do this. But during this process, my lawyer, whom had been referred to me by the lawyer I had hired, was working out of his home and was retired, but he had referred me to another lawyer. My lawyer called me in one day and said, AAA have, the law firm that they was representing them has really found out that Jaja was really off key, she was, they wasn't going to defend her in my case. And he said, they've hired a lawyer that I know. And I knew right then I was in trouble. But he said, we're going to be all right. So what happened, the lawyer bought my lawyer out, okay? And they offered me a settlement, and I couldn't get him to go forward. That's another story I will be talking about. And but the end of the line with AAA, the head of the Michigan department, after the chairman of the board in Florida, which, by the way, AAA is simply a private club. They form out all of the insurance, various other insurance companies. It's simply a private club, just like I have. But it was so ridiculous that my attorney refused to take my case any further, and I was coerced into signing a settle agreement. But AAA, after writing these letters, they had paid a lawyer in Southfield to call me in to tell me that my rights, I needed to sue my attorney for malpractice, and they would supply me with a list of attorneys that do that. But during this process, I have this on tape and also documented. The lawyer took it, but he said, Stamps, why are you dealing with this? I say, it's for the principle of what happened. He says, you know what, Stamps? He said, the graveyard is full of folks that was fighting for principle. I sit there and I say, you mean to tell me that AAA is going to hire an attorney to tell me that the graveyard is full of folks that's fighting for principle? I said, man, I know that already. And you know, I will continue later on in my book about how AAA handled this and how the chairman of the board in Florida communicated with me, and I documented all of this. That's something in the future, but at this point, I'm going to be getting ready to get off the air. I want to take this opportunity to thank R.J. Watkins. I know him from way back. But most of the people in the community don't realize how important this station and the role that R.J. has played, Mr. Watkins has played in this community, allowing people the opportunity to speak. So if any of you out there want to speak your word, you should come and see them, because you need to get the silent voices out into the community and help us realize we've got to make a change. We cannot continue to go down this road. With that, I want to say thanks to the station here and all of the engineers and people that helped me put this together, and that I have been rewarded by, I'm going to be doing a pilot pretty soon. A couple of filmmakers have been interested in my story. And this is all came about because the opportunity was afforded to me from Mr. Watkins at the station. None of my programs have been edited. Everything that I have spoke has been aired as I have said it, and that is a blessing. May God bless and peace be with you. And when you hear of my story, whether it be on film or book-wise, please listen carefully to the message of the fact that we have got to change. One of President Obama's last speech that I listened to, I always listen to the beginning and the ending, but one of the last speeches I heard him say before he left the White House, that basically, brothers, you people that look like me, you're going to have to change yourself, because you're not going to come up in here and change the system. They built this country around what it is. We were not present at the time. It was built not for the greater good of a new people that have evolved, because we were born into this. We want to thank God for this opportunity. Again, I'd like to say good day, God bless, and we'll see you on the horizon.
Home, House of Multiracial Evolution, a private club and restaurant, 18341 Van Dyke. Home provides a private space for meetings, parties, or repasts. Home also provides space for people of all racial backgrounds to come together and enjoy delicious food and support the great tradition of Detroit live jazz. For more information, call 313-753-5619.